Thank you for staying with us. You are watching BizCheck here on KBC Channel 1. My name is Betty Kiptum and Byron Abuli is my colleague on the sign language interpretation. Now we want to have a conversation on matters livestock, the production side, what is affecting this sector. And to give us this perspective is Dr. George Wamwere. He is a veterinarian and we shall be talking about matters livestock. Karibu sana to KBC.
Thank you, Betty.
Let's start with some numbers, yeah? The Food and Agriculture Organization is projecting that by 2050, there'll be 96 million Kenyans, up from the 46 million we are now. Of these, this is going to drive consumption of foods, especially high-value foods. Now, beef and milk especially will go up by 170%. Currently, there is about 10 kg per capita consumption in any kind of meat that there is, but by that time it will be much higher. We want to understand just what it means, the increased livestock production, the sustainable livestock production rather, as well as what can be done to ensure that farmers are making the most from their livestock farming. Dr. Wamwere, those numbers that you've had, what is your thought on them and the livestock industry in Kenya?
Yeah, Betty, I think I quite resonate very well with those numbers and the projections as well. We look at a very exponential kind of population growth, and that comes with the growth in the middle class that has more disposable income, that would want to invest in better nutrition, which traditionally means you are taking more proteins, more meat and milk, ideally, plus other nutritious based foods, what you call the animal source foods. One of the challenges is the level of investment in livestock development, especially the extensive livestock where I have been working, that is the beef and red meat value chain, basically, especially working with the pastoralists in northern Kenya. One of the challenges is that the level of investment does not match the projected demand. There is far much emphasis, both technically and financial investment in that sector, which means we are likely to have a big shortfall based on those projections.
All right. So the shortfall that we are foreseeing, how can we mitigate this to ensure that by the time we are getting to these numbers, there is also sufficient production for both the local and the export market?
One, I think it's important that we appreciate as a country, both public and private sector, we appreciate the importance of the livestock sector. A lot of times, when we talk of agriculture, there is generally overemphasis on crop production. That comes in with more investment in crops, because we think food security is about maize, is about wheat, is about rice and so on. Then we forget this important companion of crop-based food, which is animal source food.
Right.
That is backed by appropriate legislation that allows increased both public and private sector financing. The private sector have no problem. They only need to realize, and they know there's a business opportunity in livestock sector. And what they wait for is for the government to create an enabling environment that allows them to take advantages of those opportunities. If the risks are too high, then the private sector has no business being there, because they are motivated by profit. And if the risks are too high, which means they'll get less profit, they go to other areas which has more profit to do business there. So the production and marketing, including processing and even export of beef or red meat from northern Kenya is associated with quite a number of risks. That's why you find less private sector involved in that. And this is the role of government to be able to help but buy down that risk to allow the private sector to take advantage of that, of those opportunities.
Okay. When you say that you're working with a lot of northern Kenya farmers, just give us a context of a typical production setup of livestock in northern Kenya. Is it smallholder? How many animals? And also the challenges that are faced within that particular ecosystem.
Yeah, the production in northern Kenya, they are more or less, by and large, pastoralists. Pastoralists are people who actually subsist on rangeland, the extensive production system. Mm-hmm. These are areas that cannot support crop agriculture. And the only feasible way of utilizing that area is to have livestock roaming around, either within the pastoral production system or the ranching. But northern Kenya is basically pastoral production system. So these are smallholder farmers who own from as little as 20 maybe goats or sheep or 5 heads of cattle, all the way to over 1,000 sheep and goats or 500 cattle. And they use the rangelands. They utilize the range by moving around between seasons and between areas to be able to grow the investment, which is livestock. Now, the pastoral production system, just to go a deep further, is that, for a pastoral family, a pastoral household, the livestock they own is all they own under the sun. Yeah? Me and you could own a farm with a title D, could own a house, maybe trees, a vehicle, a tractor here and there. For the pastoralists, all they own is livestock. The land is communal, so they don't own it, they own it communally. They are moving all over the place, so they don't respect any boundaries, both local boundaries for counties and also international boundaries, because they continue to move around in search of pasture and water, as they have always done over the generations.
Right. So with this kind of setup, the ownership that there is no boundaries, really this is their only source of income, there are bound to be challenges. Take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the challenges that the extensive livestock producers face, one is there is an increase in the number of livestock, commercially to the increase in the number of people within the area. That is, there are more animals in total, but maybe less animals per household. Okay. And this has led, because of the movement and the communal land ownership, this has led to overutilization of the grazing resources that has led to degradation of the environment, and in fact loss of most of the palatable plant species, grasses, shrubs, and so on. There are also issues to do with the conflicts, because if you have to have more animals, you have less grazing resources, then you have conflicts because you have to move and people have to fight and for space for these resources. Of course, this has been exacerbated by the global warming climate change. The pastoralists will not relate this to the global warming climate change, but they will tell you we have less pastures these days, we have less water than we used to have, we have more what you call invader species. These are plant species that take advantage of the bare ground, because for them they are not palatable animals, at times even poisonous, so animals don't utilize them. So animals that are moving to look for the palatable species, they don't feed on them, and they take that time to establish themselves. And they are useless to the pastoralists because they are not eaten by the animals. So they tell you about all these that you'd relate very well to climate change issues. And they will tell you, because of this, then our animals have been smaller in size over the years. They will tell you there is less production. A typical householder will tell you, when I was growing up, we would milk one cow and it would feed my family, our family. But now, one cow, 5 cows will not will feed the same family size.
Right.
So there has been that change. Of course, the elephant in the room are livestock diseases. Because of that movement, then if my animals are infected, then your animals who, if you are my neighbor, are the next victims, and the next are the next victims, because they are feeding in the same environment, they are feeding from the same water point, and that becomes a really challenge. And of course, the last one, among many others that I may not enumerate, is that we have less veterinary support among the pastoral producers, because one, the service provision in those areas have a high kind of capital requirement because of the poor road infrastructure. There is also the vastness. Animals are more in remote areas because that's where pastures are. So reaching out to them, it becomes a bit difficult. And of course, the continued dwindling of public financing to the veterinary preventive care, like vaccination, has also become a big challenge.
Right.
For management of diseases in other areas.
In northern area. Quite a number of challenges that you've mentioned, from biodiversity loss to the reduced soil fertility as well, and the diseases as well. I think this goes into the livestock, the sustainable livestock production. So what should be done to ensure that as these households continue to, practice livestock farming, they are growing, their incomes are growing, but at the same time, we are not hurting, say, the earth that we are depending on.
Right.
Yeah, what can be done?
Yeah, one, as I mentioned earlier, is that we need to have concerted effort between the national government and the county governments to ensure that we have appropriate policies and legislation in place to support all that we need to do in order to have sustainable livestock development that is far much linked to environmental capacity that allows that. Of course, the pastoralists are very rational thinkers, like all farmers. They survive over the years. They have known to survive on numbers because that's all they rely on. So the mindset is that I need to have more animals so that I have more milk and I can sell. Now they're taking their children to school. When I need to take my children to school, I can be able to sell and take these to my children to school.
Right.
So we need the appropriate policies and legislation. This should come in to actually create more funding into that space. Really, both financial and human capital. Because like what you found in northern Kenya, those counties wholly rely on extensive livestock production.
All right.
Which is rangeland based, is a basic resource for their livestock production. But you find those counties do not have the range managers. They are employing everybody else, but they are not employing range managers because the mentality is they are not necessary. But then there is no way you can have an economy dependent on rangeland and then you don't have the right expertise to help you manage the rangeland. So these policies and legislation will come in with that. There should also be a creation of awareness among the pastoralists to have a mindset that farming is a business, so that you don't keep your animal too long in the herd, because like any other farmer, there is a harvest time. You plant coffee, you have to harvest. You plant tea, you plant maize, you have to harvest. The pastoralist is farming livestock. There must be a harvest time, even in his calendar.
Are they aware of this?
They are not aware. That's why I talk of creation of awareness.
Right.
Of course, it's not just creation of awareness. It is something to do with a lot of cultural belief and practices that has been handed over the generation. So it has to be a holistic package that allows them to see this importance, and together with this, creating opportunities to help them harvest. If you go to the cereal sector, we have several government institutions, National Cereal and Produce Board, helping the maize farmers harvest and wheat farmers harvest and sell their product. We don't have this kind of supporting bureaucracies within the pastoral production system. When do they sell? Where do they sell? How do they sell? Do they have the information of the marketing dynamics for their livestock? Are the animals disease-free so that they can access lucrative markets? Do the pastoralists have the right feeding opportunities to produce the animal at the right time so that you can get the highest price? Because currently, because of the dwindling rangeland grazing resource, the animal takes too long in the rangeland being grazed before it reaches marketable weight. An animal, a bull, it will be sold at 6-7 years when it should be sold at 2-3 years at the optimum production. So you're using twice time to produce the same amount of beef that you have produced in half the time. But then the worst part of it is that this meat is too hard, so you cannot access a niche market, and therefore the amount of money you get at the end of the day is less than you should have got.
Right. That is quite eye-opening in terms of the livestock market. When you talk about accessing these niche markets, there are standards that have been set for the product that reaches markets like the United States or the European Union. These particular standards, do you think that the Kenyan meat, so to say, reaches those standards? And if they meet those standards, are we accessing these markets?
As a country, we are capable. We have been there before. We used to have a quota to supply beef in the European markets, and that's what KMC was there for a long time. I worked in Botswana, in the beef industry in Botswana, within the Botswana Meat Commission, and I met guys there who are trained in Kenya by our Kenya Meat Training Institute at the river, at KMC. They came here to learn how to get a quota for the European Union. Now we lost ours, and then they have kept theirs. So we are capable of doing that. Kenya has, in the region, it's quite a respected country when it comes to the expertise and the trainings that we have in livestock sector, beef, dairy, or beef. But then I think there are quite a number of other socio-political issues that need to be addressed. Issues to do with disease is critical. And disease, because of this cross-boundary, what you call transboundary diseases, is not something that one county, for example, can do. It is a national effort, which also crosses to the international borders. So yes, Betty, we are capable. We can repossess our beef quota at the European Union and other markets, but we need to do a little bit more. We need to go back to where we lost the step and pick it from there. And we are capable. The International Livestock Research Institute, which is the only international research institute focusing on livestock research and development, is based in Kenya. Is headquartered in Kenya and working globally. So the scientists there, where I work, we have technologies and innovations that we have developed over the years, with global perspective, that really Kenyan livestock production can benefit from. But we need more collaboration, we need more deliberate effort to support extensive livestock producers to be able to reach there.
So that they can adopt this research.
Exactly. And the producer has no problem. He wants to, like any other farmer, you want to get more money. You want to produce more with less. Instead of keeping 10 animals that only gives you X amount of money, you want to give 3 that gives you the same amount of money, if not more. You want to have more efficient feeding that allows you to produce efficiently. So the pastoral producer has no problem, but he needs the support infrastructure that allows him or her to be able to access those opportunities. And that has all the way to move from inputs for production, the marketing infrastructure, including transport and all that, processing and even export. So it's a multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral kind of collaboration to allow this. But the market for beef is there.
It's there.
We are still exporting to Middle East, which is a less lucrative market, but also less stringent. But basically also the Middle East, they import live animals.
Okay.
Mainly the sheep and the goats. Yeah.
So let's talk about these products that we want to access the EU market again.
Yeah.
But there's something called traceability that they're demanding.
Yeah.
What is this traceability and how important is it in the livestock production?
Yeah, traceability is the thing that really unlocks marketing of livestock products. Traceability is a concept that allows you to trace back. If you are eating beef in your cafeteria, you can actually trace it back to who produced it.
The farm that they grew on.
Exactly. There's this concept they call farm to fork.
Yes.
Idea is that if you have a fork cutting beef, then you can actually trace to the farm where it came from. And this has all about to do with if you like that meat today, then you'll ask for it tomorrow.
Yes.
And therefore you become a kind of a loyal customer.
Right.
As well, if there's a problem, a challenge for you as a restaurant owner or a butcher or even a consumer, if you have a problem with that product, then you're able to trace it back for two reasons. One, you would want to tell the producer that, okay, your beef is good, but it's too hard or it's too soft or it has this challenge, or I had a health problem with that. What was the problem? And two, also to be able to allow farmers to be more deliberate in targeting their production, so that if a certain market segment in Nairobi, like Chandarana market, supermarket, for example, want only goats that are only 6 months old, that reach 6 months at this weight. You know, that's the kind of production that we're talking about. That you produce a 30-kilo goat for this after this number of months, then the farmer is working hard to ensure he meets that market, because then it offers the price he wants. And generally, that's all about traceability, is ensuring that we can trace the products from the consumption to the source.
So how exactly is this done? Because I don't imagine it would be easy for me currently in Kenya to do the tracing of the meat I'm eating to the farm it was produced in. How easy is it, and who is supposed to do what? Exactly.
I mean, for us as a country, this is not our traditional way of doing things, and therefore it's require quite a number of, again, policy and legislative support. Currently, the Director of Veterinary Services at the national level is working on a traceability bill, where we have actually participated in the discussions.
Right.
And this is the one that's going to really set the framework for traceability within our livestock sector. It is issues to do with how do we trace animals, how do we brand animals, how do we ensure that farmers register to be able to be involved in that program. And all this is setting the framework for traceability. There are already a few ranchers that practice this, like in Rakipia. We have a few ranchers that are able to offer traceability services for their own consumers, where they have the ranch, they have the animals, they even have the slaughterhouse within the ranch, and they have the market, the market where they send the animals. And it's a good beginning, because the learning that we have got from this aspect is informing actually our legislation that we are developing as a country. So this is where to begin. But I think also there are farmers in Kenya who are capable of doing the same. There are more farmers who would want to do this, but they are waiting for what you're asking. Is there a framework? How do we begin? How do I do it? Do I have the right technical support to do this? We have very well trained veterinarians and general livestock scientists in Kenya who have no problem in doing this, but they need the legal framework to allow them to do this.
When you talk about now the legal framework that is required, you've talked about the ranchers. I believe these are large-scale producers.
Exactly, yeah.
Most of the farming that is done, the livestock farming, is by smallholder farmers. So how is the government, or rather what should the government do to ensure that these farmers, who are the majority, are producing at the standards that even these ranchers are producing at? What can be done to ensure that they have this knowledge, they have the support of the veterinary services?
I mean, it's a compendium of several factors. One, of course, the veterinary as well is we have as an institute we have supported the Director of Veterinary Services to review the laws, several existing statutes. Some of them have been existing for over 100 years, to be able to collapse them into a few laws that are able to support the sector to be a more robust business-oriented sector. But two, as I mentioned earlier, the pastoral producers, if they have the right support, for example, there is appropriate extension, and Betty, sadly, with devolution, the extension part of agriculture really almost is at the rock bottom, because the counties managers did not think that extension is very necessary for whatever reason they have, and therefore we have very little funding to extension. And you cannot produce livestock and even crops without extension, because farmers need what you're exactly saying. They need knowledge. They need to be aware what is the now in-thing variety or breed of animal. What is the feeding regime? What is the market prices now? And all this. And as long as this is not being offered, what will a farmer in Loktang, in Turkana, or in Chepsiro in West Pokot, or in Mandera do? They just walk blindly. So we need to invest in extension. And of course, with extension comes in with appropriate animal health. And what we know now is that the government will not be able to meet the animal health requirements of the livestock producers. It's not possible for this to be financed from public coffers, as it has been done before. Those early years of independence up to early mid-1980s, when the structural adjustment program was introduced, and then the services were handed over to the farmers without proper preparation. They cannot, and therefore the government role now is to create an enabling environment so that the private sector will take advantage of that. And Betty, let me hasten to add that there's a difference between animal health in dairy subsector and livestock extensive subsector. In dairy, we have more curative services, and a lot of our veterinarians
focus
are inclined to that, because I treat your animal, you pay me. The animal health need of a pastoralist is more preventive rather than curative. And our veterinarians, me being one of them, are not properly engineered for preventive service provision, and maybe not from their mistake. The national animal health services ecosystem does not create the opportunity for private sector to come in. For example, preventive services, I'm talking of vaccinations. Vaccinations in the pastoral production areas are still largely dependent on public financing, which is going down, but there's no matching private sector investment crowding in into that space. The reason of what I mentioned earlier, the cost of operation in that area, and generally the historical understanding that vaccination is a preserve
of the government,
of the government, and the private sector, you have nothing to do with that. So once we realize this as an institute and as a program, because I work within ILRI, I work in a program called Accelerated Value Chain Development Program, AVCD in short, that is funded by USAID. We came in and we have been working with the DVS because that historical understanding is erroneous. Nobody has stopped private vets from being Northern Kenya, for example. But in the mind of everybody, including the government vets, private sector are not allowed here. So we supported a consultant who reviewed all the laws and policies in place and came to the understanding, honestly, there is no legal or provision to deter any private sector to work in Northern Kenya. So we work in the DVS, we agree with the DVS, then issue a circular to clarify that the role of the private sector in animal health provision. So we have reached that. The DVS issued a circular that clarified that law. And now the issue is to work with the private sector to be able to get the opportunities that are available there. And the understanding at that point was that you can, as a government, you cannot hand all the diseases to private sector. So the DVS has to categorize this type of diseases because of their national and international importance. They remain in the public domain funding. But these other diseases that are not as important and they are more localized, they are not transboundary, as so to speak, then they can be left to the private sector. And then you'll be able to create an enabling environment as a county, including if you have contract the private sector to do that. In the process of the private sector offering the preventive services, they're also addressing curative services.
And how will this particular model address the issue of affordability to the farmers of these services?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, that's a big question because the private sector, a service provider, has to make his or her money. At the same time, from the government side, you want the services to be offered because then it's for a common good. Because we're talking of getting your people in Isiolo or Marsabit out of poverty. And these people, your own people whom you're leading, are only relying on livestock. So we're talking of issues to do with buying down some of the risks that would really raise the cost of offering those services to the farmer. And if a government is able to buy down some of the risks, some of the things would be, for example, are you able to offer the private sector the cold chain in vaccination? Can you subsidize the vaccine so that the private sector is able to be able to deliver it at affordable cost to the farmer? Because, Betty, what happens if that farmer loses his animals? You as a governor or the county leaders, you have the responsibility to feed that family, to take those children to school through bursaries and so on. So you look at the general overall cost of ignoring some of these simple, easier to do kind of models is so huge. And therefore, it is an ongoing discussion. I'm sure some counties will buy in earlier than others. Like as a program, we have been supporting what you call disease surveillance, syndromic electronic disease surveillance within 5 counties of Turkana, Marsabit, Isiolo, Wajir, and Garissa. This is whereby we are working with Safaricom. We have supported Safaricom to develop a mobile-based application where what we call community disease reporters, who are community members trained by the county veterinarians, are able to report diseases. So that, because disease management is easier when you nib it at the bud. When there's an outbreak in this village, then you know it immediately, then you're able to do what we call ring vaccination, and the disease does not spread. So you spend less money to manage that disease. Also, the project don't lose so much because it's just within 1 or 2 villages. So you've been supporting this, and what you have realized that some counties took it and they are now already using it in a big way, like Turkana. They are even investing public money into it. The other counties are somewhere midway. One of them is yet to start. So it depends on the leadership of the county, how magnetic they are to these new ideas and innovations, and how they see this as a beneficial to their own people.
All right.
So it is an ongoing discussion. We believe that we shall have early adopters and a lot of middle adopters, perhaps a few laggards who may take a bit of time to take it up.
And are you planning to go from these particular 5 counties to a nationwide surveillance, the use of that system?
Right. I mean, the thing is, we are a program. And we are funded to be in those counties,
right?
But we are discussing with other counties, like we are discussing with the other programs, like within the government, the Ministry of Agriculture programs, to be able to see how we can collaborate for the uptake of these 2 other counties. And it is a system where we have been able now to generate enough evidence to be able to lobby any county or any country, because these are counties that are bordering international they're within international borders. So Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan. We have enough evidence that allows people to see the advantage of getting information at the earliest opportunity to be able to report. And when the veterinary authorities, for example, of a county, are able to get a disease at the earliest time after the outbreak, they are really happy to move and manage it within there. Because then it will require less resources, and there are less losses of livestock assets. As I told you, pastoralists only own livestock assets. So when you talk of assets, that's the only thing they have.
So when you're talking about these livestock, you've talked about the assets, these pastoralists having these as their only source of income.
Yes.
There's also the other side of public health. When people consume these meats, that's where the surveillance comes in and traceability. Just take us through the importance of these to public health, the food safety and public health. Oh,
great, Betty. Wonderful. I think that's a very good question. The public health, veterinarians are very critical because they stand between the diseases that cross over from animals to humans and vice versa, that we call zoonotic diseases. These are diseases that can affect both humans and livestock or other animals. So veterinarians stand in between there, and their role is to ensure there is no crossover for sustainable production and public health. And our disease surveillance, our e-surveillance system, what I told you, we call it syndromic electronic disease surveillance. In short, we call it e-surveillance.
E-surveillance.
E-surveillance. The people involved in collecting information are community members, whom we call community disease reporters. We have veterinarians and paraveterinarians both at the sub-county and at the wards and sub-county level, and then we have the county veterinary in charge. We also have the abattoir meat inspectors who also report to this. We have the public health officers from the Ministry of Health who are out within the wards and sub-counties who are also part of this, and as well as we also have the agrovets reporting. The way our system operates is that we have created an electronic form that is able to fit into a smartphone, what you call ODK, data collection sheet. Now, most of the community disease reporters don't have smartphones. So what they do when they see a disease, they call the veterinarian. And then they are describing, okay, the goat has mucus, it's coughing, and the veterinarian is able to interrogate. And as he does that, he's able to fill this form in his smartphone or her smartphone. And after that, he's uploaded this to a database within the county veterinary office. And the system at the county veterinary office is able to analyze through the syndromes and have what you call in veterinary differential diagnosis. If the goat is coughing, has mucus, has difficult breathing, what could be the basket of diseases that are probable to show those kind of signs. And because they are veterinarians now, they are able to interpret that and almost pin down to what could be there. Now we have the same, the agrovet operator whom we have looped into this system. They fill the details of the drugs that are being bought every day. They have bought wormers, they have bought that, and within a week he or she is able to tell that there are very many dewormers that have been bought. Why? There must be a challenge at the local of worms. And this is uploaded to the system again and analyzed. And Betty, it's very interesting that even some agrovets, for example in Turkana, have been able to actually make their purchases beforehand by looking at what they are selling and what is in demand. That tells them what problem could be and where the demand trajectory is moving to.
Right.
So we by bringing in the public health officers, the important here is that we and the abattoir, the slaughterhouse inspectors, is to be able just to address what you asked. Are there diseases that are being reported of public health concern, like brucellosis? We have had several cases of brucellosis being reported through this. You'll be also be interested to know that we had Rift Valley fever outbreak in Isiolo a few months ago, and it was captured by this system. And immediately the county was put on alert, and everybody else working on zoonotic disease were able to collect samples and confirm these, and we were able to support the county to do a ring vaccination to be able to manage, because that Rift Valley fever outbreak in Isiolo was unique. Rift Valley fever outbreak comes in through when you have a lot of rains, excessive rains, like El Nino, or just generally more rain than normal, and flooding. But in the last outbreak, there was no rain within Isiolo County, but there was a lot of rain within the Aberdares, Mount Kenya region, and the Wasonyiro River flooded the Lorian swamp. All right. And that's where that was the epicenter of the outbreak. So it could have taken quite a bit of time for people to associate some of the challenges they were seeing from Rift Valley fever. Were it not that the e-surveillance system that we are supporting the county to use it came up very fast to report those syndromes, because the community members don't know what is happening, but they can tell you what they are seeing.
Yes, definitely. Data is quite an important currency in this subsector, in the agriculture sector. Now, as you've said, there are a number of diseases that were nabbed. When you talk about these livestock, the beef itself now getting to the plate. There was a report that was done that the retail industry in Kenya is selling meat that is superbugs infected. Could you talk about that and what can be done to ensure that the meat that Kenyans are consuming is safe for them in the long run?
I may not have authority or even the data to discuss that.
Okay.
I would imagine the DVS perhaps would be the best to answer that kind of question. Because of the nature of what I work, I'm not in this kind of consumer assessment and analysis and so on. But I must say that given the kind of both the human capacity of Kenyan veterinarians, their good training, I believe we eat fairly good, well taken care of meat in Kenya. I don't know, I didn't see that report. I would be interested to see it. But I believe we take good care of our consumers, especially when it comes to meat and meat products in Kenya. Because there are also those systems that are in place, the meat inspectors, the disease surveillance, the regular vaccination, of course not to the level that we would want to as a country, but I believe we have the right capacity to assure consumers that they're getting the right meat and meat products.
You work with an international organization, so could you give us a case study of a country which maybe adopted the surveillance, traceability and identification systems and how it worked for them?
Oh, great. Yes, I told you you're working in Botswana.
Yes, you did.
Well, and this is one of the country, that's one of the country in Africa that is very good in this. They have great investment in livestock. You know, you'll be shocked, Betty. All roads in Botswana are fenced. on either side. An animal requires movement permit to move from one side of the road to the other side of the road.
Wow.
All towns are fenced around, so you don't see animal within towns unless they are being tracked to a slaughterhouse. You'll never see animals on hoof. And this is a country with diamonds, so perhaps they have used their diamond to invest in this. But what I want to tell you is that, I mean, you'll be interested to know that for them, they learned from us. Of course, those were not even areas of traceability when they came to land in Kenya, but they adapted as market demanded because you have to fit into the consumer requirements. So they have adopted those traceability. Animals are grazed within what they call cattle or sheep and goat posts, where a lot of people live in town, but you have your grazing area out of the town, where you have to drive out to go to visit your animals and so on. And those animals live there with the farm hands and the people who take care of them. And every farmer is registered.
Okay.
Botswana, they have a very strong system of administration. The chiefs and the other local administration are very strong because they have promoted their own traditional kind of the chiefdoms, where actually they are inherited. If I'm a chief, my son will be a chief, and young child will be a chief.
Okay.
And because of that, they know one another very well. And therefore, they are registered. And when the animals are being marketed, it's through that registration system. When they take the animals to their Botswana Meat Commission at a place called Lobatse, they are actually registered through the number of that farmer, the education number of that farmer. And you're able to trace that up to where the meat is taken. You can trace it back to the farmer. So because of that, Botswana has kept their EU quota for a while. A story is told, I don't know whether it's true or not, a story told that a former president of Botswana, when he was retiring, he was asked a question. Can you tell us one moment when, as a president of Botswana, you are most stressed? And he thought a little bit and said that one time where I was really stressed is when there was an outbreak of foot and mouth disease in Botswana.
Wow.
Imagine a president being stressed by foot and mouth disease, when in Kenya actually it's almost, the foot and mouth disease is almost over.
It goes to show just how important it is to the economy.
When there is an outbreak of such a disease in Botswana, which is rare, it becomes a military operation. They surround their borders and they ensure that there is no movement of livestock, even through whatever legal movement, and the veterinary is properly empowered. Now, the fencing I mentioned about in Botswana along the roads is maintained by the Public Health Ministry and the veterinary department.
Right.
So whenever there is a break, those guys are there to repair this, because for them it's a national calling. Because it's so important to the economy that you cannot leave it to the veterinary or to livestock operators only.
All right. So as we come to a close of this conversation, we've talked about a lot, the challenges, the opportunities that are there. What are your closing remarks, and where do you see the livestock industry in Kenya, maybe in a few years' time?
The livestock industry in Kenya has a lot of future. Because for one, as I mentioned, we have a growing middle class, younger population that is more interested in livestock products, what we call animal source foods, vis-a-vis crops. And because of this, I think the opportunities are there for people to grow and thrive in the livestock sector. Also, Betty, as the population increases, land units getting smaller. So these big chunks of land to grow crops may not be necessarily available, but those units are critical and important for intensive livestock production.
Right.
And therefore, there will be more people moving into this space with time. And also, the sector is actually getting involved in innovations and technology. Quite a number of farmers you've seen in news, they are young people who are keeping, for example, dairy animals.
Yes.
And they are working in Nairobi, and they're able to get on their smartphones how many liters were produced by animal X and Y, and they can actually query their farm workers. Why did this go down today and yesterday it was this? Those kind of things. As the sector adopts more technology, the younger people become more interested, and the younger people are introduced with efficient production,
right.
And really good productivity. Animals that are producing more with less investment.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, I think with the devolution, as to when they actually appreciate the livestock sector as one single most important investment that will get their own people out of poverty, then I believe there will be more funding and more investment, both public and private, having government having created, both national and county, having created an enabling environment.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wamwere, for speaking with us.
Thank you.
That was Dr. George Wamwere. He is a veterinarian, and we have been talking about the livestock sector expansively, the diseases that are facing that sector, surveillance and traceability efforts that are going into livestock farming, just to ensure that the livestock farming or livestock farmers are making the most from their farming activities. Well, this has been BizCheck, and we have had quite a number of discussions here. Thank you very much for your valued company. My name is Betty Kiptum. Byron Abuli has been my colleague on the sign language interpretation. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Bye-bye.